Good morning and welcome to Crane's Corner with Daily Technical Update. It is Tuesday the 25th of November. This video is for educational purpose only. There's no recommendation or advice whatsoever intended. And let's have a look at Apple. Apple that had an all-time high close. Not all-time high price because it was a little bit higher here back in October, but the close yesterday, new all-time high close, confirming bullish trend. RSI got back above 60 threshold if it also takes out the falling trend line there on the RSI, which is indicating uptrend exhaustion. Well, then we are in for much higher levels, or could be in for much higher levels, as long as we stay above $265. Also, weekly looks fairly strong. Could lift the market higher, and together with Alphabet or C-Share or Google that also post much higher yesterday, a really strong move, and after market it has jumped even higher to 321, so really strong push there indeed. Moving on to the overall markets. Here we have very quickly Microsoft that is very depressed, but could bounce a little bit here after reaching 200 moving average. Let's see the next couple of days. The overall index S&P 500, very strong bounce yesterday, 2.6%, and let's zoom in on it. 2.6% back above the cloud. To the 55 moving average, still negative sentiment. Let's see. I think if it moves back above and closes above this top there at 25,223, we are likely to see uptrend resuming, and that will be confirmed if RSI also pushes back above 60 threshold. What is though key is towards that we still have this massive bearish engulfing here on the weekly, so that weighs on it a little bit. However, we are still in a positive sentiment. Looking at the S&P 500, that also bounced strongly despite the fact that it closed below 6,550 and actually established the bearish trend, negative sentiment. But you can also say cancel all this at this negative sentiment. Sorry, the divergence on the RSI hasn't cancelled the negative sentiment just yet. It needs to close above 60 threshold to do just that. But a close above 6,770 could reverse the trend. And looking at Dow Jones, if it moves back above 46,800, it could also mean it reverses the trend that is that is cautiously bearish, but not that strong. Moving on to the pre-market, what's going on here? We have the pre-market in the form of the future. You can see it's basically unchanged, just below the rising trend line there. Here's the the S&P 500 mini future. The Russell also bounced strongly, almost 2%, back above 237.5. Still negative sentiment, so we are still technically in a bearish trend. Needs to get back above the cloud and back above 246.5 to reverse that. But let's see here the next couple of days. If it gets up in this area, it could do that. However, if it slides back below 235, it could resume the bearish trend. Seng in Asia bounced a little bit, trading around this. It's more like a guideline about trend line here to a bounce. We are in a negative sentiment, so we are in a slightly bearish territory. But if it moves back above the cloud and up to around the 55 moving average, then I think we could see uptrend resuming. If it slides back below here at 25,496, well, then downtrend is back in session, and especially if taking out 25,145. Then we could see a drop down to around 24,500. Nikkei, on the other hand, was lower. Here is the future. I read that SoftBank was down around 10% on fears of AI, which is interesting since Google actually made a new all-time high yesterday. So let's see how it will fare this evening in US. negative or bearish trend there, but it's not been confirmed with a close below 40 threshold. It is key that it closes below 48,000 here. If it does that, then we have a confirmed bearish trend, but for now still holding on. Moving on to the European markets, it was slightly bounced yesterday, didn't really materialize. We need to get back above the cloud here. However, we're still positive sentiment on the RSI. So on a knife's edge, so if it closes below 5,480, well, then we have a bearish trend here pre-market. Basically just also unchanged. The DAX bounced a little bit. As long as it stays above D23,000, then we could see it bouncing further, but it's quite fragile at the moment, I would say. We are in a bearish trend, no question about it. It's just holding on here on a knife sets at the moment for further selling pressure. Pre-market, not much to report. It's basically unchanged. On the FX markets and euro dollar, that has just dancing on the spot really around these 786 retracement and 115. That seems to be really a pivot here. So I think if it takes out the lows here from 21st of November, which is at 114.90, then I think we'll see a downside pressure towards 114. But we could still see a little bit of a bounce here, maybe up to 116. That's not unlikely, but there's massive pressure from the other side to push it lower with the falling moving averages. The sterling dollar bouncing here from the 786 retracement, and could also bounce a little bit further. So what I will do, and you can do the same, so just move this a little bit to the side, and then you can add another one to see, okay, where are the levels for correction. Well, that could be up to the 786 retracement, 18 retracement, sorry, 131.5 region. We could see that maybe up to 131.75. But if it starts sliding back below 130.80, well, then expect downtrend to resume. Euro sterling, oh, we need to resize there. Euro sterling dancing around the 38.2 retracement. If it moves back below 87.60, well, then we are looking 87.25. But then there's some strong support coming up here in the form of the 100 and the 55 moving average. We can see here that the RSI is showing divergence. RSI values declining, indicating that uptrend exhaustion, and that's also what we have seen. So I expect it to dancing sideways here for quite some time. Dollar yen, top is at the moment short term, but I think we will see higher levels. No RSI divergence. You see these higher values here than here is corresponding nicely with the peak here. So we could see higher levels. I think it's just a question of time before it pushes higher towards and above 158, and then we are 158.87 is the peak here from about a year ago. The euro yen, more or less the same picture really. You see there's no divergence, indicating likely higher levels after a correction could push higher, and we are back to 1990 levels. I'm not going to show, I've shown it for some time ago, really far back to see these levels. It's quite stressed, but there's no divergence indicating likely higher levels, but look out for the correction that could take it a little bit deeper. Aussie yen, actually a little bit different picture, as we do have declining RSI values indicating uptrend exhaustion, but as long as it holds itself above 100, 110 here, well, I always subtract a little bit, so 100, that is a support. If it takes it out, we could see it down to around 99, maybe dipping a little bit lower, but then we have 55 and 100 moving average coming up, giving some support and indicating underlying medium-term bullish trend. Sterling yen, more or less the same picture. You can see divergence. I haven't drawn the trend line, but it's higher here than here. So expect maybe a little bit of a setback in this bullish trend here. But the overall picture is still that it is in a bullish trend, and I think there's still potential up to around 208. We are fairly close to, so let's see about that. Aussie dollar, Still above the 64.40 here. It's not the strongest support, but the overall picture is you can see the lower lows, and also we have a lower lows here and lower highs. So we are technically in a bearish trend. It's just really struggling to keep itself up. But look at this, we have 55 and 100 moving averages turning around. So the overall trend is slightly bearish. It's just that you can also see here on the weekly chart that the cloud support is fairly strong here on the weekly. So it's still holding on to that. Dollar Canada is crawling slowly higher here, and I think it will eventually here in the next week or so pushing higher towards 142, possibly higher to 142 and a quarter. I think we are still in this bullish trend here. As we can see, that was just a correction, and it's likely to push higher. Sterling Canada, well, it has bounced strongly. It could test the resistance here at 185.45, 185.50. If it takes out that, well, then there's room up to around 187. But it could also just as well being rejected, as we have seen a couple of times. So keep an eye on that, what's going on. The Swiss franc, very close to take out the peak there, and if it does, and RSI closes, which is actually currently above 60 threshold, if it can stay above there and we can get above the peak there and above the cloud, well, then there's room up to 93.80, possibly up to the 94 area, these levels up here, and possibly 94 and a quarter. Dollar Swiss, I think also will crawl high. We have positive sentiment on the RSI, slightly bullish trend. There is room up to the 81.80, possibly up to 82, where we have the 200 moving average coming down. I think it's a question of time before we get up there. There could be some volatility before then, but it seems destined for that level. Dollar index can't really get away from this 100 level. Has spiked above a couple of times, and I think if it takes out the highest level in this one, and let's just, then we can add to it, say okay, 100 spot 35, take out that, then we are looking at 101 level fairly shortly thereafter. If it takes that out, it's still struggling a little bit, but I think we'll get there. Gold flirting with the minor resistance here at 4,133. I think it will crawl higher, and especially if it takes out the peak there from the 13th of November at 4,245, well, then we will see higher levels towards 4,500 on the medium term. We are slightly bullish undertone there. It's positive sentiment on the RSI still, but it needs to take to move away from it. Silver dancing a little bit sideways, but also with a bullish undertone and a positive sentiment. I think we'll see it crawling higher in the coming weeks, but it will be key to take out that 54.40 peak here. If it does that, well, then we are looking at $60. Platinum really not doing much, still is dancing sideways. So let's move on to copper, which is gapping higher this morning, and still above the cloud, above all moving averages, and I said it for a long time that the 55 breaking above the 200, and both of them are rising. Well, it is indicating underlying bullish trend, and also the positive sentiment. If the RSI moves back above 60 threshold, it will further support the bullish picture with copper, higher levels for copper. Still a bearish trend on crude, bouncing from the 8.86 retracement a little bit, but we are in a bearish trend, and of course the same on the Brent crude oil there. The European nat gas, well, quite heavy, and there is potential lower to around 28 euros. US nat gas stalling still. But as I said many times before, there's room to 490 and maybe $5 here, but it looks very toppish at the moment, so be cautious if you're trading that. Moving on to the interest rates and US 10-year Treasury yields that has taken out 405 yesterday, trading below it, and I think we are just above the 61.8 retracement. If it pushes lower below the lows from yesterday and RSI moves back below 40 threshold, well, then we could be looking at levels below 4%. On the European yields, and let's start here with EU 10-year as usual. Well, it's basically just trend sideways, and it's caught range bound here. It's very short, so a little bit toppies here between 274 and 264, and I think that will be the range for the next week or so, with a slightly bullish undertone. We have positive sentiment on the RSI. I think we will push higher eventually towards 280. UK, well, also a little bit range bound here, 450 support area, 462 resistance. Japanese yields bounced this morning here and is still in this fairly strong bullish trend. I think we'll see higher levels in the coming days and weeks towards 190. The bounce in Bitcoin is still ongoing. It's not that convincing, but it's still there, and I still think we will see it above 91,000, 90,820. That's the first one. We could see it back up to 97,185. The Ethereum at 3,245 is the next level, strong one here, just below 3,700, 3,630, which is the 61.8 retracement. All right, that's all for today. Have a nice day and talk to you again later.